Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Hi, I'm Jerry, as you know, and I am happy to have Charley Soderbergh and Jeanée Ledoux here with me. And I just wanted to say hi, Charley.
Well, hello, Jerry, and hello, Jeanée.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having us, Jerry.
So, Charley, for anybody who might not have read the essay, Love is a Warm Curling Iron, or hasn't heard your wonderful narration of it, could you tell us a bit about what does the story get into?
Sure. Well, I wanted to tell the story about growing up with a mom who was a housewife, but she really wanted to be a famous psychic. The struggle through family life into chaos, including my parents getting a divorce, and the house kind of falling apart around us. As a gay kid drawn to fashion, I used glamour to help patch mom together. And that was the caretaker relationship I ended up just acting out in all of my future relationships. My mother has always wanted to be famous. It's 1979, and she's finally hit the big time. Sort of. She's a guest psychic on a local morning show every Friday. I'm 11. And while other boys beg their parents to drop them off 2 blocks from school, I never want to leave my magical mom's side.
One reason why I wanted to invite you on the podcast to discuss your essay, Love is a Warm Curling Iron, is because it's the first time we've had a piece with a co-byline. So yeah, this is the first time we've had a piece with a co-byline at Queer Love Project. Not that that's an impossible feat. Obviously, people write things together all the time, but I feel like people might be curious to know how this essay came about and sort of the genesis from the first idea to what we're now being able to enjoy published at Queer Love Project. So I guess I'll start with you, Charley. From what I understand, you wrote a screenplay first about your mom or your childhood or something like that?
Yes, that's true. First of all, I would like to say thank you for pulling this all together and having me and Jeanée today. This is my first podcast, so I'll do the best I can.
Well, you have the voice for it, so I'm happy to have you on.
Thank you. The essay is based on a small childhood experience from a screenplay that I wrote about a 20-year window in my family. It was the spring of 2020. And like everybody else, I was bored and stir crazy and trying to figure out what to do with myself. Over the years, I'd been pretty free about talking about my family. And people would always say to me, "Oh, you've got such good stories. You should write about this." And I would say, so it's like a combination of my own memories. I interviewed my sisters, my 3 older sisters, and I put it all together. Some people that I interviewed were actual friends of my late mother, Midge, and that was a lot of fun to hear their perspective from outside the family, their experience of her. And it took me about 3 months to complete. And once I finished, I was emailing it to anybody that was curious, of course. And when my friend here, Jeanée Ledoux, got a hold of it, she's like, "Oh, what is happening here? We need to talk."
Yeah, Jeanée, tell us a bit about that. I mean, it's always a difficult thing when a friend asks you to read something that they've written and then you have to respond. So what was your reaction and how did you jump in to become a creative element of it?
Well, when he sent it to me, first of all, I want to say there were so many synchronicities around this project. Charley and I had been out of touch for several months. Out of the blue, I get this screenplay from him. In my experience, Charley wasn't a writer. I had never heard him express interest in writing a movie. His frigging brother is one of the biggest directors in the world, but I've never heard this man say, "I want to write a movie." So all of a sudden I get this, and the crazy thing is that I was taking my first screenwriting workshops. So he wanted to know what I thought about it. So I gave him some pretty deep feedback and a lot of encouragement. And at that time, I wasn't thinking, this is something for me. I just thought, good for him. He's trying something. And I'm kind of doing a similar thing. And I've been in classes and he just did it out of the blue. So I'll give him some pointers. And then over the months, my little wheel started turning. And I think it was Thanksgiving break or something. I know I was traveling and it was friggin' cold and it was Pennsylvania. And I emailed him to see if he wanted to maybe take some of these stories and think of them as inspiration for a memoir. You know, his life, but through the lens of what it was like to grow up with this kooky mom, Midge. And we got rolling pretty fast. And one of the other synchronicities is that, you know, he was saying, like, how would it work? Like, I don't quite understand. What's the format? Oh, let me interrupt myself and say Charley is also an artist. He does a lot of illustrations in a kind of cartoon style. And we had batted around the drawings illustrating some of the essays, having them gathered in the middle or something like that. And so, but we're thinking, is there a precedent for that? What is this like? And I read for inspiration the graphic novel Fun Home. And I texted him while I was on the road and said, you should grab this. This is great inspiration. And he happened to be at the library. And like a minute later, he texted me a picture of it in his hand.
I mean, Alison Bechdel's Fun Home is definitely something that comes up a lot, even in our questionnaire for the Queer Love Project. And I've seen the musical, I've read the graphic novel. So that's interesting that is part of it too, because of course that's about a family and the complicated nature and intersections of things. But another synchronicity that you haven't mentioned is that both of you grew up in southern Louisiana.
That is correct.
Yes, we met in Atlanta as adults, but we grew up about an hour apart in South Louisiana.
So you have this sort of synergy right there of understanding language and understanding maybe quirky characters.
Yes, Louisiana is full of them.
Yeah, and that was a nice thing that was sort of baked in when I was getting information to write this essay is I knew the environment. And so I wasn't like, well, what was it like in your town? Like, I know. Half my family went to school there. I've been in Baton Rouge a lot. I know what the air feels like. I think the essay says something like the air feels like a wet sponge. So yeah, lots of fun commonalities.
Well, so you had this template of dialogue, because right, screenplays often are heavy with dialogue and not with a lot of other description. But then you needed to work together to create so many tactile details, like you just said, describing how the air felt. And there's a lot of really great, I mean, one of the things I often do with writers is, and I teach essay writing, and I often like more concrete details, but you guys had a lot of it. So tell me a little bit about how that process went, because as you said, Charley, you're not normally accustomed to being a writer, so you're working with an editrix and trying to come to a meeting of the minds. Was there ever a moment where you guys disagreed, or was it more of like you fed her things and she interpreted? Like, tell me a little bit about how that happened.
I feel like our work together is very much like our conversations. So our work around this project is about as free-flowing, I think, as we talk to each other. It didn't feel like we went from, business to pleasure. Jeanée is very thoughtful about the questions that she asks, even in real life. And so she was, even if she was like trying to tease something out of me, I never felt like that was the case. Like she was mining for information. But she's also a really great audience. Like there was lots of and tell me more about that. Or, big explosions of laughter when I would tell her like some really nutty story about something that happened. So it was very easy, I must say.
One of the things that I really enjoyed was the description of Marianne Soderbergh, aka Midge.
I think Marianne Soderbergh, who prefers Midge, is still a beautiful canvas to work with at age 50. She has a surprisingly trim waist for a mother of 6, blonde hair, creamy skin. Her blue eyes are downturned and half hidden by fleshy hoods that hang from her brows, which to me make her look gentle. But to strangers seeking otherworldly knowledge, I'll bet those hoods signal years of training in mysterious arts. Her hair is another point of interest. It's always been frizzy, but during our time in Louisiana, where the air feels like a wet sponge, her tresses were a cottony halo. The most important job I give myself is taming them with heat and hairspray. Make me look like Dina Merrill, Mom says, referring to the golden-haired actress touted as Hollywood's new Grace Kelly. While Midge sips coffee in the cat-clawed chair next to her bed, I channel Dina to inspire a voluminous yet smooth 1960s do that flips up around the shoulders. But my makeup strategy is pure 1979. I apply so much rouge, contour, and eyeshadow, the women on Knots Landing look like fresh-faced cherubs by comparison. The last step is fragrance. Mom has an insatiable passion for unlocking the secrets of the universe, and you'd think that would lead her down a patchouli path. But she collects department store perfumes instead. Narelle, one of her favorites to spritz with a heavy finger, has a top note of narcissus. Not surprising, since Mom is her own biggest fan.
I mean, that was a really great evocative moment, and there's many of those. So what do you say to that, Jeanée? Or Charley?
Well, the memories are very easy for me to recall. They're very vivid. I'm the kind of person that can tell you what I got for my 8th birthday, but I can't tell you what I did for dinner last night. So one of the people that I interviewed for the screenplay knew my mother very well. And she remarked that my mother had this very particular scent, kind of a combination of cigarettes and perfume and a little bit of muskiness. And that when you hugged her, it kind of stayed on you. And, you know, when I would tell Jeanée things like that, she's like, ooh, well, what fragrance did she wear? You know, she would just pick it up. So I think because I'm so aware of my environment, scents and sounds, those things stayed with me. And then Jeanée just kind of took them and put them into words.
So you had your Proustian Madeleine moments.
Definitely.
And I will add to that one of my favorite parts of writing is research. It's like my version of hunting. I just love going after details. And so he told me the name of his mom's perfume. What is it, Charley?
Narelle.
Right. And then I looked, I don't think it's something that's made anymore. So I did some research to figure out, what it smelled like. And so I found the top notes, and the first top note is narcissus. And I was like, how freaking perfect, because that's one of the main things that he talks about with his mom is like, she never met a mirror she didn't like, everything was about her.
Although jonquils and narcissus have a very distinct smell that not everyone does enjoy. So that's an interesting top note as well.
Good point.
There's another great line in it about how some could also say that this is a sort of cliche story, right? Of the gay son giving mom a makeover. So Jeanée, I'm curious about those moments where you're like trying to make sure you're sensitive to your partner in this and his gayness or queerness. And I think you identify as straight, or I don't know, maybe you're on the queer spectrum. So tell us, like, what was that like being a different polar parts of that?
Yeah, I do identify as straight, by the way. That moment in the essay was more about me being aware of what other people might think than being sensitive to Charley. Today, our culture is filled with stories, true and fictional, of gay boys and men who love fashion, right? I thought we might be in danger of getting some eye rolls with an essay that opens with a queer boy making over his mother. I didn't want readers to think, yeah, we've seen it. And even though I think the detailed description of Charley and Midge in her dressing room is so enjoyable, I thought it was important to interrupt and say, hey, remember, this was 1979. Charley didn't have movies and TV shows and books about queerness. Glamour was the authentic way that he found to help solve some really big grown-up problems happening in his family.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Charley, do you remember? But that was before Dallas. So what were you watching?
Oh, gosh. I think what everybody was watching, Three's Company and Love Boat. And what was the one on Thursday night that was so good? Knots Landing. Well, which inspired the makeup for my mother.
Right. So queer-coded shows.
Definitely. Yeah, I think Jeanée just put it so beautifully that I wasn't trying to be anything other than like taking care of my mom and making her feel good, but it also made me feel good.
So tell me a little bit about that. What was it like growing up in the 70s and 80s in Louisiana, for people who don't remember or weren't around during that time, and how complicated it was being maybe like the sensitive boy, as we say, light in his loafers, sugar in his tank.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'd forgotten about sugar in his tank. It was not a lot of fun. to be honest. We had just moved from Charlottesville, Virginia, which was an idyllic town. I mean, rolling hills, and I lived on a street with kids all my age. We all went to the same school. And I think my sensitivity was already in place, but my feelings weren't. Like, I wasn't really absorbing everything just yet. And by the time we made it to Baton Rouge, I started third grade. And I think the cultural difference, the atmosphere and the socialization was so dramatically different. It was tough. It was a small town and everybody knew each other. They didn't even know how to pronounce our last name. You know, they were just like, "Where are you from?" So it was not easy. It was hot and flat, and there wasn't a lot to do for sensitive young kids, sensitive young boys. But, you know, I made some really amazing friends that I'm actually still in touch with from high school, which is amazing to me. I mean, the people in Louisiana are just incredible, as we know, Jeanée.
Can confirm.
Well, one of the things about being a Southerner often is about telling a good tale, and this is a great tale. But as much as I loved what you guys originally submitted, I actually asked for a little more. And I know that is not always easy. And I was worried that you'd just be like, "Hell no, I'm done. I'm not doing this." And I know you guys went back to the drawing board after I pushed back and said, "I want to know more about how this formative experience as a kid with your mom and with your parents' breakup, how that affected you as you grew older, and what kind of internal blueprint it might have done for your future relationships." And you guys came back with something really great. So could you tell us a little bit? I mean, Jeanée, I know I communicated that to you directly at the time. How did you navigate that feedback and convey it to Charley? And how did you guys get to the next step?
You know, it's funny. I did have a short initial reaction of like, "Oh, screw Jerry. I don't want to change this thing."
It makes sense.
But you were right, of course. You're a great editor. And what the essay was missing was a connection between Charley's relationship with Midge and how that affected his grown-up friendships and romantic relationships. And the way that we worked on this recent revision was completely different from what we did initially. Like Charley mentioned that it was very conversational. I recorded these long chats, like 90 minutes, 2 hours. I also talked to his sister Mary a couple times. Like there was just like input, and it was all in person. And then for this revision, we did everything in writing. No interviews, no chitty chat. I inserted questions and prompts into our draft on Google Docs, and I asked Charley to just vomit words. Like, don't worry about it sounding nice. Just give me maximum detail, and I'll shape it. I'll put in punchlines. And then when we were in the refining process, I would write, "We could use a concrete detail here, so give me a few examples, and I'll pick one." This wasn't as fun as the interviews, but I liked this method of working also because it was helpful to see Charley's word choices in print. We all write differently than we speak, right? So this helped me capture his voice better. For example, in the last paragraph of the essay, we used the compound word head movie. That was from his word vomit. I would never have come up with that. It's uniquely him.
And you have this really great evocative line about how it started a pattern of collecting people who were wounded sparrows.
I didn't know how to replace the light that went out for Mom, but that didn't stop me from devoting much of my childhood to just that. When I molded myself into Midge's caretaker, I unwittingly started a pattern of collecting people who were wounded sparrows. I found these projects in friends, then eventually romantic partners. I didn't even have to try, because I had a sixth sense when I met someone. "They need me," squealed an inner voice. I felt bored or restless if a relationship didn't need fixing. To feel loved, I needed to feel useful.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Let's see. I think I came into the world a raging empath. I like to joke that I had my little antenna up as soon as I arrived taking the temperature of the room, everybody's vibration. How's everybody doing? Does my mom need a cigarette? You know, like I've just been fully aware of my environment ever since. It's taken me a long time to realize that. And I think it's like just another part of me that I didn't know that I had to be sensitive to. I just acted on it. And so my impulse is to help, to be a problem solver or a helper, and be loved and appreciated, of course. So, since I had this kind of fractured family already, who constantly needed patchwork, I just took that into my regular life. You know, once I graduated from school and started dating and everything, it just became my job. And so, it was second nature. I didn't even know I was doing it. I was having people say, you know, you need to take better care of yourself, or do you realize, you know, what you're doing here? And I'm like, what? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I selfishly loved that part because I often have the same problem and have had to go to therapy to deal with it as well. And yet, you know, sometimes we talk about childhood order, and I'm the oldest of 4 and you're the youngest of 5. So that obviously doesn't necessarily do that. And I wonder if the raging empath is also partly being a queer kid and knowing that you have to navigate a lot of gauntlets. So you try to figure it out.
I'm going to say no, because I've been told that I'm not a typical youngest child. I really do think I came in fully set with the makeup that I have. I love talking to my siblings about our family and our memories and our experiences. One time I did talk to Stephen about what his experience was, and he doesn't have a lot to say in comparison. He tends to be a quieter person anyway, not an outward processor like I am. But I asked him point blank, you know, did you pick up on those vibrations? Did you pick up on the dysfunction? Did you hear the things I heard? And he said, oh, absolutely. And I said, and what was your reaction to it? And he said, to get out of there as fast as I could. And my reaction was to run back into the burning house and make sure everybody was okay. And who can I save? And no one taught us to do that. That's how we came in here. We grew up with the same people under the same roof. We had different reactions to the same situation. Once I realized that, it's kind of like everything just simmered down, you know, because I was always trying to solve the riddle. Why did I do the things I did? I think I came in this way.
So I'm curious, like, what have you guys learned through this collaboration? Obviously, you've been friends for years. You have history together. But to do a creative collaboration can be really difficult. I know, like, I've edited my husband's writing and everyone's like, what? Because there can be these tense moments where, you know, people disagree and they're like, don't tell me I'm wrong. But it sounds like this has been a pretty pleasant and easy collaborative process, or am I making that up?
I don't think you're making it up. I mean, we certainly had some moments of tension when we went back and forth and didn't agree about something, but they were usually pretty small things. I feel like I learned a lot about myself, though. I warned him at the beginning. I was like, are you sure you want to work with me? Because there is a side of me you haven't seen that's controlling. I think I called it a monster. I was like, the monster will try to come out. I'm going to be beating it back. Are you sure? And you were like, yeah, if you're doing the thing, I'll just say, stop doing that. So I feel like the struggle, that's what I'm remembering most, is a struggle with myself to not try to bend him to my will and to support his voice and always get clarity on what he was trying to say, rather than trying to push it in a direction that I thought might be better.
Well, I mean, he lived with Midge, so you're nothing in comparison.
I hope so.
Midge will get you for that, Jerry.
She's around. We can.
She's around. She's listening.
She's around. Oh, let's tell the story, Charlie.
Which story, Jeanée? There's so many.
So we went to 2 witchcraft supply stores in Pittsburgh. Charlie was living there for about a year with his husband. And this is just the way it turned out. One was like the store of light, and the other was the store of dark. One was like a witchcraft store where you would go if you wanted to like buy buy your yoga teacher a beautiful tarot deck. And the other one is a place where you would go if you wanted to like buy a potion to kill your enemies.
more binding spells than uplift.
Yes. Lots of dust, a sour, unhelpful woman behind the desk, all that stuff. But we bought a white candle and a pendulum. And we talked to the sour, unhelpful woman, who actually was sort of helpful. She told us how to create an environment where we could bring in Charley's late mother. She had been gone for about 9 years. We wanted to ask her some yes or no questions and just sort of see if we could get her blessing on the project. And also I think we just wanted to have an experience, maybe something to write about as something about the project, like that would be part of the marketing. I don't really remember why we did it, but it was fun. We were excited about it. So yeah, we set up this little sort of altar on his coffee table with a photo of Midge. Charley wrote her name on a piece of paper bag. Cameron, his husband, was making anise cookies because it was Christmas time, and Midge loved those. So we had a cookie and the candle and the pendulum. For those who don't know, you establish a direction for yes or no. You hold the pendulum very still, and it'll spin either clockwise or counterclockwise for yes or no. And I've got to tell you, Midge got excited. I remember that pendulum just twirling, just spinning like a tilt-a-whirl on some of the questions. The ones that played to her vanity, like, are you excited that your story is going to get out into the world? I feel like that was like, whoosh, whoosh. We were just staring at it bug-eyed, like, we're not doing this.
Well, I love that story. And I think that the fact that you brought in a sort of metaphysical side with your psychic mom it made sense, right? Like, why not? But you're not only getting her story out into the world, and that was my point, is you're getting your story out into the world, right, Charley? That's a very vulnerable position. Did you ever think, like, maybe I don't want this story out in the world? Maybe I don't want to share all of this part of me or my family?
No, I've never had one bit of hesitation about it. It feels natural and easy. I'd like to go back to something that you brought up just a little bit ago, about what was it like working together, because I've discovered that through the process, I have been getting to know myself even further. It's not like, I went to therapy, I grew, and I stopped, and I'm telling the story. Like, I'm still working on myself as Jeanée and I work together. I mean, we started this in the fall of November 21. That's 3.5 years ago. There have been moments where I've paused with her and said, I need a minute. And it's because I truly am processing some of the past. And when she came back and said, hey, listen, we'd like to kind of reload some things towards the end of the essay. Can you give me some more words, some new perspective? That was actually fresh information and fresh knowledge and a realization about the habit of, kind of looking for answers through partners. And so that's actually the one thing I did not anticipate through this whole thing, was learning about myself and going, wait, I need a minute to recalibrate. And Jeanée's been incredibly patient with that. So
I didn't know that, Charley. That's really sweet.
I think it's good that you were in a pro's hands, because, the hardest thing for a lot of people when they're writing personal essays is they think it's therapy, and you have to get through that therapeutic part and then come up with a beginning, middle, and end and have a narrative arc, which I'm sure, Jeanée, you were essential in trying to do that as well, rather than it just be the emotional vomit.
Yeah, I was in charge of the shape.
Well, it sounds like you guys have had a good collaborative relationship so far. Are there any plans to continue that collaboration, either in memoir or screenplay?
Well, my answer is I think that we should contact Midge and ask her to look at her crystal ball, out there somewhere in the universe, and see what's next.
Yeah, I'll throw it to Midge.
I love it.
She's pretty reliable.
Someone's going to have a dream tonight.
I think it's a rare thing to have a collaborative creative partnership. So I congratulate you both on being able to navigate that and have a really great final outcome. I do have one question that I don't know if it's a fair question, but I'm just curious. Do either of you have a favorite line that stands out from the piece? Like something you're like, I mean, Jeanée, you can be like, I'm so happy I wrote that. Or Charley's like, that's really nice the way that came out. Like, is there anything that you remember stand out that you particularly liked? I know that's not fair because you don't have it necessarily right in front of you.
I'll go first by saying I really feel that she captured once I was finished, making her up and sticking the vampire tooth in her lower denture plate and clopping across the kitchen linoleum and hopping in the Dodge Polara. She just, like, that to me that's action. And she just got it perfectly. It's almost like she was there.
Her only sore spot about her middle-aged look is the bottom tooth missing from her denture plate. While she's rich in vanity, she doesn't have the money for a replacement. This morning, she has a brilliant idea. She pulls a set of plastic vampire fangs from a drawer, snips off one tooth, and crams it into the empty slot. Voila!
That's one of my favorite moments, too.
I was also going to say, and this is not praise for me, it's just the story, that vampire fang getting crammed into the denture plate. You can't make that shit up. That is so good. But if I'm going to give myself a pat on the back, I really like the end, which we just worked over and over again, of trying to get to combining the regret of his mother going downhill with the satisfaction of just being there to keep her company and trying to help in his way. And it's not in front of me, but we end with something like, it was enough that we were just there, united in a quest for glamour.
I have the actual last sentence, which, may I read it? It's that during those quiet hours before dawn, we were simply together, united in glamour. I'm sorry, united for glamour.
Well, I hope that Midge gives her blessing and that you guys have many more productive writing sessions together, because I think there's a great story to be told.
This was really fun.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This was wonderful.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.